afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. Ali Corman, Justin Nielsen here with a breakdown of the action in today's session, where we saw a strong day for technology. Growth is looking pretty good right now, Justin, even though we're still technically in a correction.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it by looking at some of the stocks we're going to talk about today. So we'll chat about CrowdStrike, Datadog, and Sea Limited. Again, all big moves today with accompanying volume.
Yes, important to note there. So we will get into that. First, look at the major indexes. Here is the NASDAQ Composite, finishing the day up 0.7%. We had the S&P 500 up 0.3%, the Russell 2000 up about 0.25%, and the Dow roughly flat for the day. So, Justin, what do you make of the action? It looks like we broke a little bit of a trend, at least what we saw from the prior couple of sessions for the NASDAQ Composite.
Right. So, we've been still getting that resistance right there at the 21-day moving average line. So we saw that just recently, a few days ago on Thursday, and then we saw it actually a few weeks ago as well, as we got above the 50-day moving average line and then got turned away just as we got above that 21-day moving average line. So I think that is going to be a battleground here. If we can get back above that 21-day moving average line, that's going to be, speaking a little bit more highly of the prospects for a lot of the stocks. But it's interesting that we are still seeing a lot of movement in individual stocks that are showing pockets of strength. And we keep on talking about on IBD Live how it feels like there's the sector rotation that's going on underneath the surface, where a lot of stocks don't look like they're in corrections at all. And meanwhile, you have the indexes kind of signaling correction. But I will note that you and I talked about on Monday how there was this area right below, right at those highs there, where we just breached it barely. We were coming down to it, but this really seems like an area where we're getting some support. The next level, if we break below that, really is going to be that October 4th low. But right now, it seems like we're holding. That's a positive sign. And don't forget, follow through day could be any day now. We do sometimes have a little bit of nibbling that we'll do. We'll talk a lot about, we've been talking a lot about pilot positions when we are in that area before the follow through day. And so I think that's kind of one of those things that a lot of us are doing. We're taking these pilot positions, noting the strength that we're seeing, trying, not going full bore here, but it is, there are some opportunities out there.
Yeah, so the NASDAQ breaking its streak of losses here, where we were seeing a lot of selling, especially into the close.
And closing at the lows, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So a very nice change today.
Exactly.
But, there's still small spreads. It's still not a lot of action. It's still pretty tight with most of these.
Sure. And then taking a look at the S&P 500 as well, upside reversal today, but still below the 21-day line.
Yeah, and this is one where it was getting resistance right there at the 50-day moving average line. So I think that's going to be an important level for this one as well. Of course, first of all, it does have to get above that 21-day moving average line. But, another thing to just kind of show this difference is maybe we take a look at FFTY.
Yes.
Because FFTY was up much stronger than the indexes today. That's looking like it's on the verge of retaking both its 50-day and its 21-day moving average line after it got support at the 200-day moving average line. And this is where, this is growth, right? This is usually a very growth-oriented index. This is the IBD 50 by Innovator. They have the ETF on this. So when you are in a correction, you would expect this to get hit really hard. And the fact that this got supported as 200-day moving average line and is getting back above potentially these other moving average lines, I think just speaks to there are some really strong growth undercurrents underneath the surface of these index weaknesses.
Yes, really important to point out there, Justin. And now let's take a look at some of the big movers from today's session. CrowdStrike up 7% today, some nice volume behind the move as well. So really extending its gains from the time that we talked about it on IBD Live, just really kept powering higher all session long.
So I would say it's extended now, and I did buy some shares myself. As we were talking about it on IBD Live, and we noted, look, there was an analyst day yesterday, or I think it was just a company conference where they were talking about a lot of their products, made some very positive announcements. I think the CEO was on Mad Money with Jim Cramer last night. So it was starting off strong, breaking above a downtrend, as you noted, but it's also, look, this one's not alone. It's not just the comments, for this company. You and I talked about Palo Alto on Monday. You and Ed talked about Zscaler on Tuesday. There are a lot of these security software companies that have been looking strong and making these moves. And you see some volume coming in behind these moves as well. Getting back to CrowdStrike, this was some very heavy volume on this move. Really, the only volume that was heavier was back, around its earnings report, and some of those big heavy volume up days. So this is really strong action. Again, not what you would expect to be seeing with a market in correction.
Yeah, and that's, I think, been the hesitation with a number of other setups that we've seen lately is, okay, the setup looks great, but where's the volume? Where's the volume? Now
right.
we're seeing it. So
Yes.
worth a nibble.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Okay, and what about for Datadog in the enterprise software group? A strong move today, also up 7%. Volume that was about double average. This relative strength line has really been on a tear ever since that gap up on earnings back in early August.
Yeah, and what we really were noting on this one is that after that gap up on its earnings, it just never gave up any ground. So obviously, what was happening is investors were just scrambling to get shares, especially institutional investors. You see a lot of volume behind that, and they were just not willing to do any selling. And so this one hasn't even gotten underneath its 50-day moving average line. That line has been going in a very strong uptrend, and it's still been able to match that. So that's a lot of strength. And again, as you pointed out, that relative strength line right at new highs. This is at all-time new highs. If you just go ahead and take a quick look at the weekly, you can see how orderly this has been. After that move out of the gap up, it's just been steadily rising, not giving up ground, getting support at its 10-week moving average line. And so, yeah, a big move today. Again, a lot of volume behind the move. This is one that we've been talking about holding up very well, not giving up ground. And so those are the relative strength line clues that you're going after as well. And when we saw that the volume was coming in, this is one that was on the watch list for leaderboard, and it was brought to the leaders list today.
Yeah. And Justin, we talk a lot about making sure you keep your watch list fresh during a correction. So for investors who have been reading investors.com, watching IBD Live, watching this show, it shouldn't come as a surprise really to see this action, because Datadog, again, is one of those names that we've been following as it's pulled back in this orderly fashion to its 10-week line before today.
Yeah. And I mean, there's two parts to this. It shouldn't be a surprise to see Datadog on this list. That part shouldn't be a surprise. The moves, well, guess what? I'm surprised on some of those.
Yes.
That is, I wasn't expecting these powerful moves. But again, what you're going to find is if you're building your watch list with these strong relative strength names, you are going to see the leaders come out of that list. It's going to be very hard for you to miss a lot of those leaders. Now, granted, you are going to miss the beaten down names that have these, these big turnarounds. Those aren't going to be the relative strength leaders. But for those that are leading and continuing higher, it's going to be hard to miss them if you're very diligent about keeping your watch lists fresh.
Right. And so it finished the day about 10.7% above the 10-week line. So arguably seems extended at this point. But if you were watching IBD Live this morning, it definitely would have put the stock on your radar before it got extended.
Exactly. And you know what? For leaderboard, what we were looking at was the first hour high. So that's when we activated it. It got above that level, and it started pulling back a little bit. And so we waited because it looked like the indexes were fading a little bit. But as soon as the indexes started coming on a little bit strong, especially the NASDAQ was the leader today, we went ahead and activated it as it was right above that first hour high.
Great. And now let's take a look at Sea Limited, the daily chart on this one showing that RS line blue dot before the stock is hitting a new price high. So notable there. Shares up 7.6% today. And once again, volume behind this move today, Justin.
Yeah, so this is one that we added onto Swing Trader. I actually picked up some shares myself after that 30-minute restricted period, came off. It wasn't moving very quickly at first. It kind of went sideways for a little bit, but then it really started picking up the pace. After a while. So a strong move. And again, here we are seeing some very heavy volume behind the move. You go back to the previous heavy volume spikes. Well, there was an offering. You do expect a lot of times for there to be some spikes in volume around offerings. So this is really kind of a standout in terms of the volume here. So that's a strong sign. Again, this is one that has been refusing to give up ground. It's been holding that 50-day moving average line. I don't think you need to wait. In this case, it's a flat base, right? That's being identified by pattern recognition. It was a very mild pullback, 14%, I think, if you hover there. Yeah, 14% depth. So I think there were a lot of early entries here to take advantage of the downtrend line, or even, if you draw a line from the highs of a week ago, kind of like where it hit that resistance 2 days. Yeah. So either one of those, I think, was making it actionable. And again, it came through there. There was already volume in this that you could see in the morning.
So Justin, I guess just to wrap up here, final comment from you on how strange maybe it is for the market to still be in a correction, to us not have a follow through day yet, and to see this type of strong action and just the number of compelling buying opportunities that we saw today.
Yeah, it is unusual, but we've been in this unusual market period where, what we saw before was the indexes moving up strongly, where a lot of us were looking at our individual stocks and saying, man, unless you had Google, Microsoft, and the big cap names, you were like, I'm struggling. I'm not making headway while the indexes were doing well. And now, at least personally, I'm finding that I'm making more progress in a lot of my individual stocks, even though the indexes aren't showing as much strength. So there is this kind of bifurcation, and a lot of times that will happen with sector rotation. It does seem like things are moving very quickly. We were talking about energy and financials as being so strong, and then those kind of came out of favor for a little bit. And solar stocks, and it just seems like there's a lot of movement back and forth. That can be tricky to do trend following if the trends are only lasting a few days. So just still, I think it's a time to be careful out there. There are these pockets of strength, but you have to not get overly excited, because if you start buying extended, if that rotation comes in, you can find yourself on the wrong end of it very easily.
Yes. Well said, Justin. Thanks so much for that analysis. And thank you all for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow morning on IB Live with more. So make sure you watch investors.com/IB Live. We look forward to seeing you there, and right back here tomorrow after the close.